We play the part of a man. Shazam! But you are a lost boy. Give us the powers, or you will annihilate everything.
You are very menacing.
It's showtime!
All right, here's the situation. The daughters of Atlas are coming to hunt us.
This is revenge. But we come bearing gifts.
No, that's a hard pass. That's a hard pass.
Come on! Let's get down to business. I don't got no time to play.
I might not have as much experience as you because I'm not like super old. But I've seen all of the Fast and the Furious movies. And it's all about family. Family! Guys, that was a signal.
Shazam! Fury of the Gods.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Get those wonderful toys. Try fireman. Let's to take off.
I am vengeance. I am the knight. I am Batman!
No! They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother.
Have we started the fire?
Yes. The fire rises.
Welcome, citizens of Gotham, to The Fire Rises, a Batman podcast focusing on all things The Dark Knight and his world. If you'd like to connect the show with, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at TFR Batpod. And if you have thoughts, questions, comments, or even suggestions for future episodes of the show, you can reach us by email at tfrbatpod@gmail.com. My name is Eric Carter, and I am your host, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mr. Joseph Fornerado. Joe, this is an exciting episode. I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I am very happy to be here to review the next chapter in the DCU. These are always the fun episodes. We haven't been able to do too many of these since we started, but it's always an occasion to get to talk about it. My biggest regret is I only got to see the movie once.
Yeah, that is a shame. I have seen it twice. And we're going to talk all about it. It is always exciting when we get a new DC film to dive into and review. I think the lead up may be more, well, it's hard to say it's more fun than the actual film, but the lead up to a new DC Universe film is just so fun. We are officially in the new era of DC. I guess this is the first film since James Gunn rebranded it the DCU instead of the DCEU. And Joe's dog agrees with the squeaky toy.
On cue, sorry about that.
No worries. So yeah, Shazam! Fury of the Gods was just released a few days ago as of this recording. Officially, what was it? March 17th?
Yes, March 17th was Friday. We saw it. Well, I saw it on the 16th.
Yeah, so Joe saw it on the 16th, the Thursday night previews. I don't know why they just don't make Thursday the official release date, because, I mean, it really is.
It's got to be a promoting thing where they could say, like, they can count the Thursday towards Friday. I don't know. It's got to be some weird thing with the numbers to make it look better than it is. Who knows?
Well, and I even saw that Mario, and this is a tangent, but the Super Mario Brothers movie is starting on a Wednesday night.
Yeah, I've seen that before with other movies too. I don't know what makes them decide whether there's a Wednesday or what. I mean, is that a holiday? When does Mario come out?
I think, from what I understand, I mean, it's the first or second week of April, and I think there was some spring break considerations they were making.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because that is more of a family movie. I mean, this is too, but that's neither here nor there. We have both seen Shazam! Fury of the Gods. And we're going to talk about it. Unfortunately, and I just want to start with this, get the negative out of the way first. It doesn't sound like a ton of people are going out to see Shazam Fury of the Gods. And that honestly is a shame. I
Well,
think
I it's almost like you caught yourself when you said the lead up is sometimes better than the actual film, and I think because in this case, it's the rare case where it really hasn't been that way, because there hasn't been a lot of build up for this one, unfortunately, other than us just discussing it. But I think the Flash is overshadowing this. It's almost like, to give a sporting analogy, it's like you got a big matchup coming up, and you're overlooking the lesser team that you are playing prior. And I mean, lucky for
mm,
us, we are still we were still excited about it enough, and I mean, not to bury the lead here, but we both enjoyed the movie. It's just a shame that there wasn't a lot around it.
yeah, I think it seems like your analogy is pretty great. It seems like the Flash is the championship, and we're looking forward to that so much that even DC is looking forward to that so much that it feels like Shazam was just kind of it got put on the back burner and it wasn't really focused on very much. And even if you look at the marketing, there wasn't a lot of marketing. Even you had mentioned, so far as even the small things like, yes, Shazam got a McFarlane action figure, but outside of that, I mean, it got a few Funko Pops, not much by way of merchandise or anything like that. And it is a
No,
shame, because to a lot of people, the first Shazam film is considered like one of the best DCEU movies, or DCU at this point. But it was one of the most well received. It didn't. Now, to be fair, the first Shazam movie also was not a big smash. I mean, it made modest. It was a modest hit, I would say.
well,
But
that's the
everybody
thing
that
that's
saw
hard
it
for
seemed
us.
to enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's hard for us to gauge like the general audience of Shazam, because it didn't make a lot of money. It was sandwiched between. We talked about this the other day. It was sandwiched between what, Captain Marvel and Endgame,
Mm-hmm.
or was it? Was that the year it came out? Was Captain Marvel and Endgame?
Yep. Yep.
So it didn't get a lot of publicity when it was in the theaters, but it had good word of mouth. People liked it, but I don't know as far as like the numbers go with how much of the general audience saw it on streaming or whatnot afterwards. And it just seemed like it got a sequel, luckily. And then with everything going on with DC, I'm very curious to see how they would have, and we'll never know, how they would have pushed for this prior to the shakeup. If all
Mm.
things were still how they were, would they have promoted it more? Or is this more of a budgetary thing with WB Discovery? There's so many things going on with WB right now, and I think a lot of it just has to do with everything, almost like a cumulative thing. And the Flash. I think the Flash is the biggest thing. Is they're putting all their eggs in the Flash basket, and it was more important to make sure they got that right with the promotion, and they were kind of just, whatever happens with Shazam happens. And I hope we still continue with it. That's the hard part right now, is you need some sort of profit or at least excitement to justify another Shazam movie. And
Well,
I don't
there's
know how that's going to come up.
there's a few things here. When you look at this film, it did not have a huge budget. The budget was $100 million, which is half of what Black Adam's was. So it doesn't need to make as much. But the unfortunate part of that is it looks like the opening weekend tracking has it at around 30 million. The first one made 53 million. When you're looking at a franchise, that's not the trajectory you want to see as a
No.
studio. So unfortunately, I think for a myriad of reasons, Shazam is in kind of a rough spot. And I mean, David Sandberg, the director, was pretty transparent about this online when he was talking about future installments, and he said, you know, the future of this franchise is going to depend, like most movies, on the box office. So that is kind of a daunting thing. But I don't want this whole episode to be doom and gloom because as you've already said, we both did enjoy this film and I want to give it its due. So without spending too much time on box office and the future and what's going to happen, let's just focus on the film for now. So we are going to start spoiler free because again, not a lot of people have seen this movie. So if you're listening, I hope you have gone out opening weekend and seen it. But just in case, we are going to speak in spoiler free terms for the first little while here. And I am going to put a timestamp on Twitter and I'll put it in the notes of the episode. So if you're listening to this episode, just look down in the notes and you'll see there's going to be a timestamp of when we actually get into spoilers because I don't want to ruin anything for you. I wish WB also didn't want to ruin things, but that's neither here nor there. Joe, just some general overall spoiler free thoughts. Tell me how you felt about Shazam Fury of the Gods.
Well, it's funny. The first thing you say is spoiler free. I won't even mention the TV spots because that's how aggravated I was with that. Spoiler free, like we were talking about. I think even going into this film, we had kind of. I don't know if I want to say accepted is the right word, but I think my biggest thing with this movie is I don't need to know what's coming. I don't need to know what the connections are with the greater DCU. I just want to go see a good movie, a good sequel to a film that I really loved. I love the first Shazam movie. So the fact that we were getting a second Shazam film, I was really excited about that. And I gotta say, it did not take me long to get invested in this film. I mean, it starts off great. It gets emotional pretty quickly for my benefit. Um, I really loved it, and honestly, after one viewing, to me, I think it's really close to the first one. There are some things in this that I love more than the first one, and there are some things that um it's hard without spoilers. I think there are some things it doesn't do quite as well as the first one, but it's different. And I think that's what I love is it's a different story, but it still has that same emotional core that was my favorite part of the first one. And I actually the humor in this one might even work better for me than the first one did in certain areas, which I was really impressed with because there were some really great laugh out loud moments in the theater for me. So yeah, as far as spoiler free, unless you have anything specific that you wanted to address with that, that's pretty much where I'm at with it. I definitely recommend it. This could be on even ground with the first one for me. Right now, because I've only seen it once, it's a little bit behind it. I don't know if we're going to get into our DCU rankings when we conclude, but right now for me, it's only one film behind the first one. I made some adjustments with my list, but it's really close to the first one. I really loved it. So I hope more people go see it. And I hope that if for some reason the box office continues with what we're expecting right now, I hope it does gangbusters on home video and streaming because I really want people to see it and I really want people to enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. And so far as the DCU rankings, I don't think I'm quite there yet to be able to talk about where I'd place it because usually I like to digest them a little bit before I decide where I'm going to put them on my list.
Mhm.
Honestly, I'll probably wait until after it comes home on home
Yeah.
media so
Well,
I
you've
can
already seen this
watch.
more than you saw Birds of Prey. Just throwing that out there.
That's true. That is true. Uh, but I do like to give them some time to really think about them, and I have thought about some things. There was and we'll get more into it when we get over the spoiler wall. But I always like to start a little more on the negative side and go positive. But there's really no negative I have about this movie. I have a nitpick, and that's all. And it's not even a spoiler. Some people have said this about the first movie. I didn't really feel it in the first movie, but I did here. And I talked about this after my original viewing of it. I told Joe, I thought it was an Asher Angel thing. Um, the guy who plays Billy Batson, the younger Billy Batson, I don't think I liked Asher Angel's performance in this movie. And then after thinking about it and after watching it the second time, um, I think that Asher Angel and Zachary Levi, unfortunately, are not on the same page with this character. That is the only nitpick I really have. And even my wife coming out of the movie the first time, it's like she said, it doesn't feel like they're the same person, and I agree with that. I think Zachary Levi is playing it at a whimsical to the 10 level, which I really like, and Asher Angel is playing more of a vulnerable, kind of a little bit more of an angsty teenager kind of version of Billy Batson. And I don't feel like the two really mesh. Like when he says the word, when he becomes Shazam and he's interacting with the Shazam family, when he's being a superhero, it's like he's a completely different person. So that's really my biggest nitpick. I think they both do fantastic jobs when they're on screen, but they don't seem like the same person, if that makes sense. But other than that, I freaking love this movie. I think it's a ton of fun. I think there's so much of the heart that was in the first one, because that's when I describe the first movie, that's my biggest indicator is heart, and it's here as well. I think there's just so much heart in this movie. I think there are bigger stakes in this movie, obviously, than the first one, because the first one felt very small. I'm not, and that's not a detriment. It felt very intimate, I would say. This one has bigger stakes. It has a bigger threat. Um, but it's played well. The villains are great. Helen Mirren, Lucy Liu, Rachel Zegler, all the new additions to the cast here are wonderful, and it works really well. I love the creature designs, and apparently, did you know that Sandberg designs all his creatures for his movies?
I did know that just from following him on Twitter, and I think I listened to an interview with him also that he went into that a little bit because he said he loves doing that so much. That's like one of his favorite things. So
Yeah,
yeah, I did know
and his
that just
creature
from listening
designs
to
are
that.
fantastic.
Yeah, he loves spending the time on that, which is really cool.
And I would even say, I will say this about this movie. I think the creature designs in this one are better than the Deadly Sins designs in the first one.
Yeah, he had more
Just,
fun with these, I think. And then the budget being upped a little bit, and I got to go
mhm.
back to that $100 million budget. Bravo, David Sandberg, because this is a great looking film at $100 million.
Oh, he did a ton. He did a
Yes.
ton with a budget. And that's the great thing about, I think you said this about a week ago when we were talking about the budget. You said, well, he's a horror director, and that's what they
Yep.
do. You know, they get a lot out of a small budget. And it almost reminds me of superhero movies via Blumhouse, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah,
They just do
definitely.
so much with so little.
And he does a great job of blending the practical effects with the CGI too, because even though there's a lot of creatures and a lot of stunts with the CGI and everything, they still have physical rigs and trucks and stuff that are doing the practical stuff that your eye is focused on, and then you just have the CGI monsters around it, which is it's cool. They could have just very easily done everything CGI, but he finds a way to really merge the two, which I really appreciate. And he's been
Well,
sharing a ton of fun stuff online right now.
yeah, I
Um,
was just about to say that I love,
yeah,
because he does have a cameo in the movie, and that's, I mean, it's not a spoiler. We're not going to tell you what it is, but he showed like kind of the behind the scenes of his cameo on Twitter, and I just thought
yeah.
that was neat. It was really
Mhm.
cool. Um, but okay, so there's not very much more we can say outside of that without getting into spoilers. So I think this is a good time to kind of uh, kick in that spoiler wall and let you guys know that proceeding from here on, if you have not seen Shazam: Fury of the Gods, step away, go watch the movie, and then come back to this point in the show, and you can get our full thoughts on it. So there's your warning. 3, 2, 1. We are over the wall. So Joe, um, tell me how much WB ruined their biggest
how
surprise
much
of the movie.
how much they pissed me off. So
Yeah.
it's funny because I'm ultra sensitive to spoilers anyway. I am. I just everything bothers me. If someone tells me something that's in the movie that I didn't need to know before going into it, to me it's a spoiler. It could be something as trivial as I can't. I don't even want to give an example, but very trivial. And then they release Wonder Woman's cameo in a, you know, let's call it a desperate attempt to try to get people to go see this movie. And listen, when people were talking about that in a negative way last week, where they were like, "Oh, it's so such a desperation move," I'm like, "Ah, whatever. Like, who cares?" I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Um, People were complaining that Gal Gadot really wasn't in the movie, so they did it to shut everybody up, whatever. And then we go see the movie. And the first scene with Wonder Woman is hilarious, where you don't see
Mhm.
her face, they're hiding it, and it ends up being the wizard, and I'm like, oh, this is hysterical. But I also think at that point, I'm like, you know what, this is fun, and it's also okay because I know Wonder Woman comes later, which is even going to make it even better. And then the
Mm.
movie keeps going, and the movie keeps going, and the movie keeps going. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, Wonder Woman's still coming. Wonder Woman's still coming. And then we get to the emotional crux of the movie where, yeah, we're over the wall here. Billy sacrifices himself. We're going right to the end of the movie here.
We're pulling Jamie
Sacrifices
Drooly.
himself. I'm sorry, but it's just, we want to get the negative out of the way. It's an emotional scene. It got me. And part of me, for a split second, when Billy dies, I say to myself, holy shit, like, what if they do, like, I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm trying to think logically here. I'm like, okay, what if he was supposed to come back? But now, because
Mhm.
we know that the universe is changing, what if they're like, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just sacrifice Billy, make him make the ultimate sacrifice. It would be so emotional. I'm like, oh my God, they're really going to kill him. Like, this is devastating. And then it hit me. Oh, son of a bitch, Wonder Woman still has to show up. And it ruined the rest of the movie for me because I knew exactly what was going to happen from that point on. Right in the middle of the emotional core of the movie, that got me. Even despite knowing this, it got me. I was into it. Even if he does come back, like, because let's be honest, I assumed he was gonna live. But
Mhm.
it's still an emotional scene with Freddy, pleading for him to wake up, and they do bury him. I'm like, wow, like this is really tough to watch. But then you know in the back of your head, like the scene where Wonder Woman shows up and you're like, oh, this is stupid now because, and how awesome would it have been to been in the theater, even if you're like, oh, well, he's gonna come back though, it doesn't really matter, but to not know that she's the one that brings him back, and then she comes in and saves the day because a god has to be the one to bring back the staff. And I'll let you talk now before I keep going and ranting and raving here because this is probably the most negative people will ever hear me. And I have more to say on it too, so I'll let you go and then I'll finish.
Well, I'll tell you the exact difference that it makes. Um, our buddy Matt, that Matt Hewlin, who has been on the show before, he was texting me a little earlier, and I'll tell you,
He didn't know.
he had no clue.
Oh,
He
God
had
bless him.
because he doesn't dive into this stuff the same way that we do. So he had no idea there was a TV spot. He's a little disconnected from social media, so
Yep.
no clue. He didn't know that she was in it and was very surprised and thrilled when
Yeah,
she popped up at the end.
I can imagine.
Um,
And also because, like, if I didn't see that spot, I would have never known. Or I should say, if I wasn't on Twitter, I would have never known because I don't watch TV with commercials and stuff. So I would have never seen the TV spot. It's just our community just blew it up. And again,
mhm.
this is going to sound stupid and maybe a little ignorant of me. Guys, if you share spoilers, you're part of the problem. Like, if someone posts, I know it's WB doing it. So you could say it's not a spoiler. But if you're calling out someone for sharing something on Twitter, you're then sharing that.
You're spreading it.
Yeah. And again, it was official. You could say, okay, it's official, so it's not technically a spoiler, but I don't know. But yeah, I wish, man, God, good for him because that's
well,
awesome.
well, David Sandberg wasn't happy about it.
No, he was not.
and I can see why, because if you watch the movie, if you get to the and the scene where you first think you're gonna see Wonder Woman, it's a dream sequence. Billy's dreaming. He thinks because there's this whole through line of the film where he's really got the hots for Wonder Woman.
Mhm.
And he's dreaming about going on a date with her.
Which is
And you get
hilarious.
this,
The whole scene is
yeah,
hilarious.
it is hilarious. But you get that tease, and Wonder Woman, you don't see her face, and she turns around, and it's the wizard's face on her head, on her body. Um, so when I saw, I knew she was coming at some point, but when I saw this scene, I thought this is brilliant because if we didn't know that Wonder Woman was actually going to be in it, it's almost a joke on what happened at the end of the first movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
It's like they're
it's
trolling us.
exactly.
But in a
And if I
fun way, like,
hadn't,
because I still love the end of the first one. So to me, it's like, oh, you didn't like that? Here's something worse.
well, and I love the explanation that Sandberg gave of it online, because or it might not, maybe it was during an interview that I heard where he was talking about, they shoot composites with a body double
Yes.
in the hopes or in the plan of bringing in the actor when they're available to shoot the scene. And then they just, they put him in the scene.
Yeah, I
That's
think
what
he
they
actually
did
put that on
with
Twitter where he was staging it. Like they use it for lighting and the setup and everything because they might
right.
not have that actress for a long period of time. So they want everything ready when she gets there.
Yeah, so they did the same thing in the first one. It was supposed to be a stand-in, and they were supposed to shoot the complete scene later with Henry Cavill. Then the Cavill thing fell through, and they had to go with what they had. So this time, they were actually able to do it, and then it got ruined, unfortunately. But we're not gonna focus on that. Um, I guess some kind of things because we're not going to go. We don't go beat by beat through these movies. So I just kind of want to know, kind of some, our usual what we do, standout performances, highlights of the movie. What do you think, Joe?
Well, to get my one negative out of the way on that scene,
Mm-hmm.
the Wonder Woman scene, despite the spoiler, whatever. My one negative, and I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with me on here, but I wish they didn't go right to her theme right off the bat because I felt like it was too emotional of a scene to then have her booming theme. I wish they almost like built to that and then went to the theme when she actually brings him back to life. Does that make sense?
Um,
And I
Maybe.
don't mean like do you agree with me? I mean like am I explaining that right? Like I wish.
No, yeah, the way you're explaining it makes sense. I don't agree.
Okay.
Because that was like the biggest pop of the movie with the crowd that we were that was in my theater. Like when her
And I think
music
it might
kicked
be
in,
because
it
I knew
was
it was
like,
her, so the theme didn't work for me. You know what I mean? It didn't have that. Like, if I didn't know it was going to be her, the theme probably would have meant so much more. But because I knew she was coming, I wanted more of the emotion that I was supposed to get, which was, again, it just took me out of the film because I expected what I was getting. And
maybe.
that's where
I'm
I
not
think I need
sure.
to watch it again. I think because I was so aggravated at that point watching it, because I wasn't enjoying it like I wanted to, how I should have been enjoying it. On
Mhm.
my second viewing, I'll probably be able to accept what I'm watching more than being annoyed.
Gotcha. Um, well, I will say this. I think Helen Mirren can do no wrong. I think she was phenomenal in this movie. I love that, that she has the appearance of an elderly, woman, but yet you completely buy that she wields this, this godly power. And there are a few times in this movie where she just kicks Billy's ass. And I thought it was pretty cool. I don't think Lucy Liu was as great as Helen Mirren was. But she held her own. I just unfortunately, and this is nothing against Lucy Liu. I just don't think she's the caliber actress of Helen Mirren.
Mm-hmm.
Like I almost, and it's a tiny thing, but if the roles were reversed and Helen Mirren had been the big bad all the way through, instead of it kind of switching to Lucy Liu, I would have been really cool with that. I don't. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I never really thought about it, to be honest with you. I was good with the way it went.
Like
And I
honestly, like the dragon to me was more the villain than Lucy Liu was towards the end of the
yeah,
movie.
she was just the the vehicle to get to the dragon. That's really all it was.
Hmm.
Was someone had to be steering the dragon. It happened to be her. I could give or take. I mean, it didn't really make a difference. I think Helen Mirren had more of a presence throughout the movie, rightfully so. But I think
Hmm.
Lucy Liu was that. I mean, really, you could argue she's the typical villain. She's not the layered villain that Helen Mirren was, where Helen Mirren starts questioning what we're doing here at this point, and Lucy Liu
Hmm.
just wanted to be the villain. That was it, and I was okay with it for the story. Again, that's where some of my nitpicks might come in that maybe are not as great as the first film, more than it is anything that I really didn't like about this one. But it does kind of become a by the book superhero versus villain story by the end of this with some monsters and stuff. But I was still entertained. It just wasn't um
Oh yeah, I think that's got to be clear with this movie. If you're looking for a superhero movie that reinvents the wheel, this is not it. I mean, this is a very straightforward, um, almost formulaic superhero movie, but that's not a negative. I think they took a tried and true and they made it work.
well, I
It
think
works.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It works very well. And I think it's because of the family dynamic that you see in the movie. I mean, like I told you, the one scene with Asher Angel that really, really worked for me was the scene on the roof near the end of the movie when they're kind of, formulating the big plan, the big, gearing up for the finale. The scene where Rosa asks him, because he's in Shazam form and she wants to see, there's this idea that he may not make it through this. And before he leaves, she wants to see Billy, the real Billy. And there's been this whole thing throughout the movie, which I do really like about, he's going to age out of the foster program soon. He doesn't want to be a burden on the family. He's never called Rosa mom, and it's kind of a byline through the movie, and at the end he calls her mom. I think that was the best performance by Asher in the movie. And I think, I had complained earlier or the first time I saw it to you about I didn't think Asher was great. And looking back on it, he just isn't in the film very much. I think that's the thing. Like, this movie is very much more Zachary Levi's movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they because you have the family now and you see them accepting the fact that they're superheroes, you're getting more of the superhero action. I think that's fair for a sequel. You want to see more of the heroes doing their thing. You want to see less of the origin. Um and I
Well, yes,
think
but you got 3 times more Freddie Friedman than you did, like
yes,
Freddie in
because
just Freddie form, than you did Asher.
yes, but I also think we got a lot more Freddy as a superhero in this than we did in the last one too. So I think they found ways to still make it. You're right, Levi's movie. To me, they're
Mhm.
making it Shazam's movie because they didn't want to make it strictly a Shazamly movie. They wanted them all to have their parts, but they still, at the end of the day, wanted it to be Billy's film. But it just so happened to be Billy in superhero form. And I agree with you, Asher doesn't have a lot to do, but when he does, he's great. And I think the issue that they have, and I said this to you, Zachary Levi is playing the same Shazam that he played in the last film. And I think in the last film, the differences were still there as far as the characterization of Billy as a kid or as an adult. The differences were there, but they were less drastically different
Mhm.
because he was younger. Where as an adult, how do you play a 14-year-old? It's hard enough as that. Well, now you have to play a 14-year-old that's now an 18-year-old who's grown up and become a
Who is played
mature.
by a 20-year-old.
Yes, and he's playing like not an immature 18-year-old. He's playing someone that's grown up in the foster care that's trying to, he's definitely mature for his age, but how do you do that as a almost 40-year-old man? It's not an easy task. So I think it's just more glaring in this one. I don't think he did a poor job. I think you're right.
No,
They
no.
just weren't on the same page.
I think the issue is Asher is aging out of the role.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
And I think it would be weird if Zachary Levi just played Shazam as Zachary Levi. Like that's really at some point I think that's what has to happen, is because you said he plays him as whimsical. I think that's fair. My typical headcanon that I like to do is like justify mistakes in films. My way would be, well, when he becomes a superhero, he just lets loose. He can be his childlike self. He doesn't have to be the angsty kid anymore when he's Shazam. And again, that's not what's happening. I'm just saying that to me is how I could justify it.
And for me, it's
like
not
it's like when you put a mask on, you now can just be free. You don't have to worry about anything. You can be,
well, yeah.
You can have that whimsicalness. Is that a word? Whimsicalness?
Well,
no, it's not.
I completely would buy that a teenager, would just go all out having these powers and things like that. The only thing that bothers me is it seems as if he loses a little intelligence when he becomes Shazam.
I can say I love that they call that out. I think that was hysterical.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, but that is not how Asher plays the character.
You're right. It's tough because like how his way of playing young is playing naive in a kind way of saying dumb. But I will say my favorite parts of Zachary Levi as Shazam are in the Rock of Eternity, because I feel like those are when you get those subtle moments of him being dialed back a little bit.
Well, I like when he's conflicted because he feels like he's losing his family. That's when Levi really turns it on.
Yes, those are the parts that you could see he's dialing it back, and you're channeling the emotion as opposed to like, for lack of a better term, the dumb side of, Billy.
Yeah, and then when he like the whole ending, I mean, when he starts protecting the family, when he makes up his mind that he's gonna, basically sacrifice himself, Levi he nails it. He plays it, and he plays it well the entire movie. Like I said, I just think there's a little bit of a disconnect between who he's playing and who Asher Angel is playing.
I think disconnect is the perfect way of saying it, because it's not like they weren't talking about it. I'm sure they were trying. It's just, how can you get into each other's heads to play it perfectly that way is hard. And I think you're right. It's a little off, and I can't disagree with that at all. It's there. There's no denying that it's there.
And I think the biggest thing
out of the film at all.
The biggest thing playing against that is like DJ Catrona as the superhero Pedro is just like Pedro. And the same can be said for, the adult version of Eugene and the adult version of oh god, what's the smallest sister's name? Darla. Like those adult characters, they seem more consistent.
They also have less to do. But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But they also didn't have much to do in the last film, so they're only doing this for the most part, like kind of for the first time. But you're right. Their characters are much more dialed back, emotional. Like they're just not as flamboyant. Like they're just they're subtle. Where I still think Zachary Levi is a little bit more subtle than he was like in the first one, but I still think in the first one he was a little over the top compared to how Billy acted. I think, crap, what's his name? The guy that plays adult Freddy. And he's the most famous one. How could I not remember his name?
Adam Brody.
Adam Brody, thank you. He does a great job of channeling Freddy perfectly.
He does, and I'll say this too, so far as Freddy, I think Jack Dylan Grazer and Rachel Zegler have a wonderful chemistry in this movie.
They were great.
Like,
And you knew that she was playing them, but you didn't want it to happen. Like, you were like, oh no,
yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. Please no.
But I love that even though she was playing him, because she is one of the daughters of Atlas, she is, she is a god. I love that it's kind of like she's not completely playing him. She has an agenda. She wants to help her sisters, but at the same time, she actually does have feelings for Freddy, and she likes Freddy. She
And right
wants
off the
to, and
bat, she's not into it. Like, she's not comfortable with what she's doing. You can tell.
no, and I love that you come to realize that her character, what is her name?
Anne?
Anthea. Yeah,
Okay.
Anne or Anthea as the god. Her character and Hespera, played by Helen Mirren, they want to restore what was taken from them by the wizards. Because the wizards, they stole the powers of the gods, and for good reasons, but they stole the powers of the gods, and these two sisters just want it back. But
Mhm.
Lucy Liu's character, Calypso, she wants revenge, and she
Yeah.
wants, to take out humanity. So I do like that, that kind of back and forth between the sisters, where um, Anthea and Hesperus are trying to convince Calypso that they don't need to do this. They've gotten what they need. They just want to live in peace and rebuild, their realm. But no, Calypso's not having it. And I will say, so far as everything that's set up with Atlas and, Zeus and these, daughters of Atlas, Wonder Woman really fits this movie. I'll say that. I mean, with all the
Oh,
gods running around, she's a
absolutely.
perfect inclusion.
It makes perfect sense for her to be in it. I think that's why it being spoiled aggravates me even more, because the whole time you're watching this movie and you're hearing Zeus and you're hearing everything about gods throughout the whole movie, you're like, oh, like, you got to think Wonder Woman's going to come up at some point. And even before she's in the movie, she's brought up fairly. Like, oh, and I got it. My favorite gag of the movie is the birds. What are they called? The god birds or the something messengers? The bird messengers.
Yeah. Where
That
I
was my
can't remember
favorite
the
part of the
exact
movie.
name, but yeah.
That was my favorite
Where
part
they
of the movie.
can
But I love how he's like, should we write Wonder Woman something? And they kind of gloss over it, whatever, and you do find out like he has been writing her with the birds or whatever.
which is so great, because so many people complain about, well, why aren't these other superheroes included, when things like this happen? And I love that Sandberg actually thinks about it, because he included that he had the forethought to think about Superman in the first one. He had the forethought to think about Wonder Woman in this one. So I love that he's making these ties to the greater world that they exist in. I love that.
Yeah, and it's just fun. Even if they don't show up, it's just fun to hear them talked about, to recognize them, and it's yeah. I never had a problem with Superman's, quote unquote headless cameo, because I thought it was fun. I like that they addressed that in this. That now Freddy is known as the guy that's friends with the superheroes. I think that was fun. There was just
Yep.
there was a lot of callbacks to the first film. This definitely felt like a sequel, and I like that. It's so weird to me that a lot of criticism of this movie going in was, how does it fit into the greater DCU? And we've just talked about how like we love the Wonder Woman connections and this and that, and they're fun connections or Easter eggs, if you will, about the greater universe. But I love that you could still just watch these two movies and get a complete story. You don't have to watch a Wonder Woman movie to get a full arc. It's she's there and it's fun, but it's still a Shazam movie. And I appreciate that with the DC universe as we have it, where each movie still works in its own universe. You don't need to have everything else outside of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I do love that, like you said just a minute ago, it does feel like a true sequel, because there are ramifications from the events of the first movie that lead into this. The staff being destroyed by Billy, just,
Mhm.
as an afterthought in the first one, so that Savannah can't use it. becomes a consequence in this film. And that works so well because I love the continuity there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it becomes a big deal. Now, how the staff ended up
How
going
scary was
from
that first scene?
Philadelphia. Oh man. Oh man. Yeah. When they show up at where were they at? They were
They're at a
in
museum in Egypt, right?
somewhere like that, which I still don't know how the staff got from Philadelphia to there. But yeah,
I
it's
a lot of people
it's
die in
wild that they
a lot of people die in this movie, and I'm sorry, Dietrich Bader's death was one of the most horrible deaths I've seen in a comic film.
Oh my gosh, the fact that Calypso, her power though is really cool. This power of suggestion, where
Yeah.
she just whispers in someone's ear and they do whatever she says, and
Mhm.
she makes him walk off the roof of a building. And
Like,
oh
horrible,
god,
and he's such a lovable guy too.
did you catch the joke from, I can't remember if it was her or Hespera, where one of them said, "I forget how much they pop." It's like,
Oh,
oh
yeah.
gosh.
Terrible, but like so well done because the movie has stakes. Like it's it's a fun movie with some brutal stuff in it. Like
Mhm.
you we said it about the first one. Sandberg does definitely channel his horror roots, and he finds ways to do it with fitting into the tone of the movie. It's really hard to balance that tone with the humor. To me, works so well because they don't go out of their way to like have gags. I guess it's natural. It's natural humor that works in the context of the film. But then when things are being serious, they stay serious.
Yeah, exactly. And so far as the horror roots you're talking about, what in the first movie, it was definitely the Seven Deadly Sins, where David
Mhm.
Sandberg really got to flex his horror muscles, and he does the same thing in this film with creatures. But I love the attention to detail, and I know you didn't catch on to this because you said you weren't as much into that, but the whole point behind Calypso's plan is to plant this tree of life in the mortal world, which spawns these creatures. And all of these creatures are actual mythological creatures from Greek mythology. So you have chimeras and cyclopses and unicorns. By the way, probably the most badass unicorns that have ever been on screen.
Yeah, I recognize unicorns. I know them.
Okay, I'm glad. um, But yeah, those unicorns were wicked, and he
So
just
cool.
really he has such a way of using creature design and just making them awesome and terrifying. I mean, that dragon, how awesome is the dragon in this movie?
I mean,
Because
and again, 100 million. Like everything looks good. There wasn't one spot where I'm like, "Ugh, that looks rough." Like no, like even if it
I will
was a
say the
little
only
lesser
time,
quality, it was like spread out evenly. So like one thing
yeah,
didn't look worse than another.
the only time I will say that I kind of saw the budget was at the beginning with the bridge scene. There were a few
Yeah.
spots there where I was like, that doesn't look great. But then it just went away because when the
Mhm.
creatures were on screen and the super heroics were going on later in the movie, it's like, no, this looks fantastic. I mean, I hate to be this guy, but it looks way better than most of the things I've seen from the other company recently.
Yeah, that's the easy
Yeah.
comparison that we can make, and you know me too with needle drops. I'm a little fussy when they have music. I think the gags with the music in the first scene were hilarious. And I love that they called it out where he's like, "Oh, really? I'm saving you while this song is playing." Like I
Oh,
just love
when she
how
was listening to I Need a Hero.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it was just so well done. I again like it was really fun to see them start the film with all of them and see what they've been up to as the family. And I just there was so much great stuff in this that was different than the first one, but yet when it came back to the heart, that's what made me fall in love with the first film. It got right to that really quickly when Billy 20 minutes in when Billy was talking to Mary about aging out. I was already in tears and I was like, well, this movie got me. Like I'm in. And
Mhm.
if you can get me that early with the emotional stuff, then chances are I'm going to forgive a lot more going forward. And I didn't even need to in this movie. I think everything worked. Like I'm still going back to the laugh out loud moments with the, the bird notes where they're literally like, I love how he's saying stuff to the pen Steve, and Steve's writing everything down, and they're like, Steve's not going to write this down. Don't worry about it. And he's literally writing down what they're saying. Like, it's so great. Like,
Oh man, when they send the note to Hespera
yes, and
and
she's reading it like, what the heck is going on? It's great.
oh man, it's so funny. It is so
Yeah.
funny. That was probably the biggest laugh in our
Mhm.
theater was when she was reading the note from Billy, and there's all the oh gosh, and I can't remember what the note says verbatim, but it's everything literally that they're saying to each other. Oh man, it's great. Which makes me wonder what in the world those notes to Wonder Woman actually said.
Yep.
I would love to get like a deleted scene of Wonder Woman receiving her letters.
Oh, I didn't even think of that, because the stuff that he doesn't want Steve to write, he's writing anyway. So it's going to say a lot of stuff
Yeah.
on those notes. That's great. That would be really funny if there's like if there's a special feature section that just have the notes like written out. We don't even need to have her reading it. Just like have us like see what they are. That'd be really great.
I did want
Almost
to.
like a found, like the found camera at the end of Hangover. Like have that as like an additional thing.
There are a few things I did want to bring up. I love that Michael Gray got a cameo in this. He was the original Billy Batson in the TV series.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a little cameo, which I think
Wearing
is so
the original
cool.
suit.
Well, sort of.
It's
He was
homage
wearing a
to the
shirt that
original
looked
suit,
like
yeah.
it. Yeah.
It was clearly meant to, like, if you didn't know who that was, you could kind of put it together.
Yeah. And then David Sandberg, as we mentioned earlier, he had a cameo where he was eaten, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was eaten by one of the
think so.
creatures.
And did his wife survive this time?
Yes, she
I feel
did.
like
She did. She was
survived this
on the
time,
bridge.
yeah. Yes, so they saved her.
She was the one listening to "I Need a Hero."
Yeah.
So the other thing I really wanted to talk about was the suits, because I think they made a drastic improvement on the suits from the first one to this one. These superhero suits look phenomenal. I do think I don't know why they decided to make the Shazam family, and especially Shazam himself, so over the top muscled in the first one, but they really streamlined it this time. He still looks muscular, but he doesn't look puffy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's
Like
almost
it's
like
very
they got
much
it so perfect this time. It's like, how did you? And I don't have that much of a problem with the first one, but you're right. Like, you got it so perfect this time. How did you think last time was better? But it could have been a budget thing or a time thing. I don't know, but it's so perfect this time. Like, it just shows that there was no reason to puff them out as much as they did, because let's be honest, they're all in pretty good shape as it is. You didn't need to do that.
right, exactly. And I love that, they used effects on their side this time, because I don't know if you heard this, but they did not physically light up the lightning bolts on their chest this time. They did it in post.
They did it in certain spots. They did certain spots. They didn't. They used it when it benefited them, and then always fixed it in post. That's what Sam said.
Right.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of problems with lighting the lightning bolts in the first movie. So I'm glad that they decided to take a more practical approach in this one. But yeah, those suits, they look really, really good. I mean, the texturing, everything like that. I did find it interesting that they reshot the Savannah scene from the first movie.
I found that odd. I guess it's just to keep the continuity with this film.
Right.
I found it weird, because I think I would have rather have seen the old suits for that scene, because that's how we have it. But I get it, because if you're just watching this film as it is, you're going to be like, why are the suits different? I don't know. I could see it both ways. I also think Sandberg's explanation of, like, and I don't think this was the intention, but remember he said last year, oh, well, this takes place after the Flash, so the Flash causes this. So maybe it retroactively changes the suits in the first film in his mind. I don't know.
That's actually a good segue, and I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if this film takes place after the Flash or not, but we do get a pretty interesting post-credit scene that I want to talk about. You have the post-credit scene of Amelia Harcourt.
So specify that's the mid-credit scene.
The mid-credit, well, whatever. It's a scene during the
I
credits.
always
It's
say
after
mid and post. That's what I
it's
always
after
say.
the movie.
Yeah.
There's a mid-credit scene where Amelia Harcourt approaches Shazam about joining the JSA. Now, what's interesting about this is, are either one of these characters going to carry over to the new DCU? We don't know. We have no idea what the plans are. But it's interesting that they know a potential reboot is coming, whether that's a soft reboot or a complete reboot, that they chose to leave this in the film. So I
And
kind of wanted to
that's
get
what,
your thoughts on that real quick.
to me, that's promising. And I wonder if it's just them allowing Sandberg. You made and again, we don't know if even Sandberg was the one in charge of that post-credit scene, mid-credit scene. Like, is he the one that said, I want this? Was it DC? We don't know. But one of two things. If for some reason that was like something that Sandberg agreed to do because they wanted it and he liked it, so he kept it in, or DC was like, it's fine, just leave it in, whatever you want to do. If you want to take it out, we can. To me, it's promising that it's left in no matter what, because it could go either way. There's no reason that it can't still connect. There's no reason that these characters can't still stay on. I think even if it doesn't, I still think it's a great gag and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I love that he kind of calls them out for the Justice Society, Justice League. That's confusing because fans have been saying that for years.
Yes, the scene was funny, but the ramifications are interesting to me. And to your point, what you were saying about who wanted it, who didn't, when it was, James Gunn has been clear that scene was shot and a part of the film long before he ever took the reins.
Oh yeah,
Of DC.
There's no doubt. Yeah, that's why I think it's promising that it's still in there, because they could have just as easily taken it out.
Yeah, so it's good that it wasn't his decision to have Harcourt in there, but they kept it anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious about that. What makes me hopeful is, even if this film isn't the success that DC and Warner Brothers wants it to be, we have potential here that, if James Gunn decides to do a JSA movie down the road, we have this that could potentially include Shazam in the JSA movie, even if he never gets his own movie again.
That's how that's what I was looking forward to, because you have Hawkman, Aldous Hodge, that you can use in a JSA movie. People loved him in Dr. Fate. If Dr. Fate can come back in a way, hey, you know what? Years later, if you want to bring Black Adam back in a JSA movie, let's bring him back. Who cares? You can do a lot of stuff with that. And if you don't, you don't. It doesn't matter to me either way. I still think it works good for this film. And me personally, if you have the choice of keeping it in or taking it out, and you decide to take it out because of continuity reasons that possibly could go further, I'd rather leave it in and just see what happens.
Yeah. And then we also had another scene after the credits, which was kind of a joke about the original movie's post-credit scene, where you had whichever scene it was, where you had Savannah and Mr. Mind. They're in the same prison cell. There's jokes about how long it's been, and Mr. Mind returns and he's like, well, I'm a worm, I can only move so fast.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty funny. I don't know if that'll ever go anywhere. I mean, Mr. Mind could actually be a great JSA villain if they decided to do something like that, or he could be a Shazam 3 villain. Who knows? But I thought it was fun that they at least revisited it, and I like that Mark Strong, was a good sport enough to come back and do that little scene.
Love just to bring him back for that one little quick scene, just to have a joke on the post credit, was great. It was a lot of fun. Even if it goes nowhere, it is just kind of poking fun at themselves almost. And did you hear that Sandberg, the initial pitch for this film was that Mr. Mind was going to be the mastermind, no pun intended, I did not mean that, I'm sorry, behind this.
he was going to be the one that freed the sisters.
Yes, but he said it was just too complicated of a story for time. Like they had to streamline it because it took too long to get to it. It wasn't worth that. And he said sometimes you just gotta. It's better to make the movie what you need to make it than to be married to that early script phase. And I would have loved to have seen it, but I get it too. Like why if you don't need it, don't just put it in because you feel like you have to.
Well, and I'll be honest, as much as I would have loved to have seen Mr. Mind as a mastermind villain, it was awesome as a growing hero that it was a consequence of Billy's when something he wouldn't have even thought about, But, those growing pains of being a very young superhero, your actions have consequences, and him breaking that staff is the reason that these sisters are freed.
Yeah.
That's it works. It works really well, and I thought it was a good story point. Now, as much as it may have been, a convenient way of when they were in the writer's room going, you know what? We could do this. It doesn't matter because it worked really well in the film, I thought.
Mhm. Yep, I agree.
Okay, well, are there any other huge points that you want to make? I know we're never going to be able to cover it all, but are there any points that you absolutely wanted to get in before we move on, Joe?
I don't think so. No, I think I'm good. I just no,
Oh,
I
I
wish more
just
people would
remembered
see the
one.
movie. That's
Yeah, I do.
oh, go ahead.
Absolutely, I do too. There's one last one I do want to make the point of. Um, the fact that bullying doesn't change is an interesting point of this movie that I did want to bring up because I like the real world points that Sandberg makes
Mhm,
because there's that point where Freddie is still very much the target of school bullies
mhm.
even after he's seen hanging out in the school in the cafeteria with Shazam and Superman.
Yeah.
you know he's still being bullied and things don't change, which is an interesting look at the world, and I'm glad that they included that. And also I mean there's if there's a scene I love in the house, um, in the family home where they're explaining to Rosa and Victor that they're superheroes, and Pedro chooses this moment to come out,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a non-reaction from everybody, which is awesome.
Mhm.
And even Shazam looks at him and says, "We know, bud." You
Yeah.
know, that's such a cool moment. I like
Yep.
that. So I did want to make sure that I brought up that point. But yeah, the the two movies, Shazam 1 and Shazam Fury of the Gods, I think um they really focus on the bond of family, no matter what the family looks like. And that's I think that's the strongest point to these movies. Outside of all the super heroics and the big CGI battles and things like that, I think that's a great message, and I'm glad that we have these two movies that share that core and that message.
Well, that's why I take exception when people say, um, maybe this is a paint by numbers superhero movie or it doesn't give us anything we haven't gotten before. I disagree with that because of the family stuff. Like, yeah, it's still a fun superhero movie, but you're giving us more than that. And you're giving me a reason to watch this besides the superhero stuff. If you can keep my attention when the superhero stuff isn't going on, and to the point where I, for the most part, like that stuff even more than the superhero stuff in this film. The family
Mhm.
stuff is great. The jokes about, the dragon just destroyed our house that we just bought, and they're like, wait, you bought the house? And it's like such a quick thing, but you get what you need in like a 2-second dialogue, and it's
Mhm.
funny, but it's emotional too. That he literally just said in a 2-second thing, a 2-second joke, we bought the house, so now it's ours, so we're keeping all the kids, and it's funny because the dragon just destroyed that house. Like, you literally just got so much information there, and then you go back to superhero.
Yep.
I
Oh,
think,
and
when the mother says, I don't know how to parent here, that was great.
yeah. Oh, and also just the fact that Jaimin Hansu got so much more to do in this movie.
Oh, we didn't even mention him yet. Yeah, geez. I mean,
He's
that
so
whole
good.
story with him was great. Yeah.
And the fact that he gets a kind of a little bit of a glow up at the end of the movie.
Yup.
And I love that he's a part of the world and he's taking the staff back because he doesn't think that Billy's, quite ready to be in care of something like that. So yeah, that's great. Jaimin Hansu's wonderful as the wizard. I'm glad that he continues to be such a huge legacy character for DC. But anyway, let's put a pin in it there, Joe. Give me your final thoughts and, of course, a battering rating on Shazam: Fury of the Gods.
It's up there with the first one for me, and the first one is one of my favorite DC movies. I love this movie. I think I will love it more and more after my subsequent viewings. I only got to see it the one time. I was really bummed I didn't get to go again. The one plus to this bombing is it probably will end up on HBO Max sooner than later. So I will end up watching it multiple times when it hits there, and I can't wait to own the Blu-ray. It's already got a date in May, I think. So I can't wait to own this, put it on my shelf, and watch it over and over again with the first one, because I think they work so well as two films, just back to back, original and sequel. And listen, if we never get another one, we have two Shazam movies that we love. That's pretty awesome. I would love more. I want more of these characters, all of them. The family was great. I got to give this, jeez, I got to give it 8 out of 10. It's hard because I think I would give the first one an 8 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would go 7.5 out of 10 for this one, but right now, no, I'm going 8. I don't even care. I'm going 8 out of 10.
Nice. As for me, yeah, I mean, other than the small nitpick of the the Asher Levi dynamic, um, I had a blast with this movie. It's a movie that my wife and I really connect over because of the the foster system and the way that the first one shed light on that, and the way that this one continues to, and the family dynamics, and the way they're not scared to say certain things that some people are scared to say. I really appreciate that. And then just, it's so much fun. This movie is so much fun. And again, congratulations to David Sandberg for just making an amazing looking movie on the budget that he had. And, you know, just being a blast of a superhero film that I think I'm going to get a lot of rewatchability out of. And yeah, I think the first movie, I adore that first movie. I think the first one is a probably a 9 out of 10 for me. And so this one's just a tiny bit behind that. So I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10 batarangs. And I cannot wait to see it again and again when it comes home. Maybe I'll get another chance to see it in the theaters. I don't know yet. We'll see. The slate is so packed this year. But I do look forward to seeing it again. So there you have it, guys. There is our look, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little more in the future, but there is our review and look at Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Please, please, please go out and support this movie. If you've seen it, go see it again. If you know people that haven't seen it, go take them. I think this movie definitely deserves it. But that's where we're going to wrap up the coverage of Shazam for today, but we're not quite ready to leave you guys yet. We do have an email to read. I sent this one to Joe. Actually, I didn't spring this one on him this time, so he's had some time to think about it.
Yeah, but I forgot about it because I did terrible at homework.
Well, you can do it off the cuff. This email is from Ron Messbarger. And Ron says, "Hey TFR, new listener here and loving your podcast. Hope you're doing well. I have gathered some of these answers from your episodes, but don't know them all, so I thought I would ask." And Ron has a list here of questions for us. He said, what is your favorite Batman, villain, family member that isn't Batman, romantic interest, comic story arc, movie, actor, and artist? Thanks for putting out a fantastic show. Always look forward to new ones or to hear y'all on Holy Batcast. You guys are great. Well, Ron, thank you so very much for the email. That's awesome. And thank you for listening. We're glad to have you as a newer listener here. I don't know if you found us through Holy Batcast, but if so, that's awesome. Love those guys; they're great, and we're happy to be occasional fill-ins for Andy. He's a wonderful person, and we love doing it. But Joe, what do you think of Ron's email here?
Yeah, thank you for sending in the email, Ron, and thank you for listening. I think we're gonna have we're probably gonna have some similar answers here between the two of us. But
Yeah, we'll go back and forth here. We'll round robin it real quick. But
all
yeah, I
right.
just wanted to give you a chance to show some appreciation to Ron there. Um,
Yeah.
but so far as his categories here, so who is your favorite Batman villain, Joe?
I mean, favorite villain, it's boring, but the Joker. I'm not gonna try to find some, hidden gem there. It's the Joker.
Yeah, it's the same for me. My favorite Batman villain has always been the Joker. Bane is a very close second for me. I love Bane, especially when he's done right. Some people don't do him very well, but when he's done right, Bane's awesome. But yeah, it's tried and true. It's a classic. It's Batman's arch nemesis. I got to go with Joker. Okay, so next up, Joe, family member that isn't Batman. So who's your favorite Bat family member?
And there it would be Dick Grayson. Um, Probably boring also. Do I have to specify Nightwing or Robin? If I do, I'll say Nightwing, but I'll say Dick Grayson. My close second though is Barbara Gordon.
Yeah, and mine is clear cut. It's Nightwing. I love Dick Grayson as Nightwing. Um, Even I love him more than I love him as Robin because Damian Wayne's my favorite Robin, but I think Dick Grayson is such a great character as Nightwing, and I think he's the natural successor as we're seeing in the comics right now to be the next leader of DC as a whole. So yeah, it's Nightwing.
It's good. The more
Okay.
the more you talk, the more we disagree. Because if you just leave it at the top one, we're good. Then you start saying these second place ones, and I'm like, yeah, no, get out of here. But all
Okay. So romantic interest. Who is your favorite Batman romantic interest?
right, that I might go a little different. And this is kind of off the. Um, I'm gonna go Julie Madison because I like when he has a
Wow.
love in, I like when he has a love interest that's kind of a normal person. I don't like him with Catwoman or Talia for the most part. I'm going Julie Madison.
See, and I'm different from you there as well, but it's not a typical answer either because now this used to be Catwoman. And a certain writer recently ruined that for me. So um mine's Silver St. Cloud. I
See,
just think
I
she
don't think I've ever read a story where him and her have a relationship other than I guess the Marshall Rogers stuff, and Steve Englehart stuff from right. Isn't that when she's really prevalent?
Yes. So the Englehart Roger stuff is where I really like the connection between Bruce and Silver St. Cloud, and it's always stuck with me. So yeah, honorable mention to Talia because I like kind of I don't know, kind of the forbidden
You like
fruit kind of edge to that there.
the baby mama.
So yeah. Okay, comic story arc, Joe.
That's I mean, I go back and forth between Long Halloween and Court of Owls. I think every time I'm asked this question today, I'm going to go Court of Owls
Why did you have to do that today?
because you're going to say Court of Owls too anyway. What the hell's the difference?
Because mine is absolutely Court of Owls. There's no question about it. Okay, movie. What's your favorite Batman movie, Joe?
If it has to be live action, it would be Batman Begins. But movie all together, Mask of the Phantasm.
Nice. Mine is. Oh God, you threw animation in there. Okay, I'm gonna pretend he said live action film. My favorite, Batman Begins, is absolutely my favorite. Took me out of my Batman funk from Batman and Robin, and I don't. I've been waiting for a film to top it. There's been some movies after it that I've loved, but Batman Begins is just so great. For a little while, I thought it was The Dark Knight, but man, the more I watch Batman Begins, that movie is so great. Okay,
It's good to
actor.
have a bunch of Batman movies that we are neck and neck.
Yeah, for sure. Actor. Who's your favorite Batman actor, Joe?
That's really hard. It's really hard for me to choose between Ben Affleck or Christian Bale. It is really hard for me to make that choice because I think we've had 3 really great Christian Bale Batman movies, just Batman movies. But I think if I was strictly going my favorite Batman movies aside, and I love the Ben Affleck movies. That's not a dig at the Ben Affleck movies. It's just we've gotten more of Christian Bale. But I think if I had to strictly just go actor as Batman and Bruce Wayne, I got to go Ben Affleck.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, Ben Affleck is far and away my favorite Batman ever. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to an actor, as much as I do love Bale, and I really, really have a soft spot for Pattinson. I loved that performance. But yeah, it's Affleck. I mean, he looks the part, he plays the part, he's a great Bruce. Yeah, it's Ben Affleck. But I will say this: there are some Pattinson movies to come, so we'll see what happens. And we're getting a new Batman in the DCU. So, all right, last question here: favorite artist, Joe? Favorite Batman artist?
Mine's Greg Capullo. No, it's Greg Capullo. Sorry. So if you say Greg Capullo also, then we're just idiots that agree with each other on everything. But yeah, it's Greg Capullo.
So this one, given the day, a lot of times I will say Greg Capullo, but in my heart of hearts, it's Jim Lee. Jim Lee has he's always been my favorite. You know, I there's so much of the time that I want to think it's Greg Capullo, and as much as I love his art, I look at Hush and then I'm drawn right back in again.
You know what's funny, and we could talk about this way too long, and I know you got to get going.
Yeah,
I think Jim Lee's Batman is the best Batman, perfect. But I want to say, as far as like, I just have such an appreciation for Capullo's art in general. But yeah, it'd be hard for me to say that I think Capullo's Batman looks better than Jim Lee's Batman. I think Jim Lee has the best looking Batman, hands down.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough. That's definitely a tough one.
Yeah. Well, there you go, Ron. Sorry that Joe and I are boring and many of our answers were so similar, but that's why we have a podcast together, because we do think very similarly when it comes to our superheroes. So there you have it. But thank you so much for that message, Ron. And we're glad you're listening. But that is the end of this episode for today. That's where we're going to wrap it up. So, Joe, thank you once again. I'm so glad that you enjoyed Shazam as much as I did. And why don't you tell everybody out there, in the meantime, until our next episode, where they can find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as JForn11. You can find me on Facebook as Joe Fornerato, FORNAROTTO. Thank you for having me back on. This was a lot of fun to get to talk about a new movie. I don't even know what we're talking about next, so I'm looking forward to what's coming for the podcast in the coming weeks, because I kind of like it when you kind of spring things on me, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know about that. All right, cool. So let's we've got a couple more months till Flash, and a lot of fun stuff to come.
Yeah, well, we do have some recently released DC animated movies, so maybe we'll talk about one of those. Not sure yet. Haven't decided. We'll see. But in the meantime, you can find my personal accounts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd. That's MeCarter89. That's MECarter89. The show's accounts can be found once again at TFR Batpod. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you have thoughts, opinions, you can send us emails like Ron did at tfrbatpod@gmail.com, and we will read those on the show. And if you're looking for a way to support the show, the easiest way to do that is to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or on Spotify, you can leave a star rating. But if you leave a written review on Apple Podcasts, we will read those on the show. And if you're looking for another way to support us, and we don't ask that you spend a dime on this show, but if you'd like to, we really appreciate it. You can go to redbubble.com and search Shop TFR, all one word. You can find tons of stuff with our awesome logos on it. But until we meet you again, thank you so much for listening to the show, and please, we implore you, go see Shazam, Fury of the Gods. I think it's worth your time, but that's where we're going to wrap it up. So make sure you keep that bat signal lit and pointed skyward.
And taste the rainbow.
Batman was created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane and is the sole property of Warner Brothers Discovery. The Fire Rises, a Batman podcast, is in no way associated with Warner Brothers Discovery, DC Comics, or DC Studios. The thoughts and opinions of the participants of this show are their own and do not represent the companies that they work for. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Taste the rainbow. Yeah, that's actually exactly what Matt just sent me, because I guess he's leaving the theater and he sent me a picture of a huge bag of Skittles in his passenger seat, and he said, "Taste the rainbow, mother."
That was great, and I love that it was dark because it's so like out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely.